Hi guys, I'm Lisa from Elman B, Scottish artist and fairy maker. Today we are going to jump straight in and do a very beginner friendly painting tutorial. If you have never painted before, if you have never picked up a paintbrush before, then this is the tutorial for you. I promise anybody can paint this. We are going to get started right now. We are going to need a mop brush. I've got a couple here. Mop brushes are the big, round, fluffy one. And yes, you have guessed it, these are makeup brushes. So literally blusher brushes for your cheeks are perfect for painting this painting. We are also going to use a little round brush, so just a standard paintbrush that you would pick up in any art supply shop. And I might use a liner, which is this long one, and then a little micro tiny one here. But those are optional. You literally need an old blusher brush if you've got one, and then any round brush that you would pick up from an art shop. I have got a 20 by 20 canvas here, and I have double primed that with acrylic gesso, which just means I gave it a coat of white gesso, sanded it back, gave it another one, and sanded it back slightly. You don't need to do that. You can go and pick yourself up any canvas from any art store and just get started if you want. You can also buy pre-primed canvases. Now, let's go and get some paint. Today I am using fluorescent orange, fluorescent red, some fluorescent yellow, permanent rose, deep violet purple, turquoise blue, and titanium white. You can use any colors you want. You don't need these fluorescent ones. You can just mix some of your rose and your violet with your white to get your paler color in the middle. But I like a little pop of that neon just to help brighten up the center of the painting. Let's get started. We're going to start by taking some of the white onto our dry mop brush, okay? So we didn't get any water on this at all. And we're just going to start by tapping in the center, okay? So lots of little taps. I promise this tutorial is super easy. Anybody can do this. I'm then just going to pick up the tiniest little corner of my neon yellow there, and I'm going to kind of tap that round the edge of that white space and bringing it in. So we're creating a fantasy forest or woodlands today. I'm just going back over the center there, just making sure that we're getting a little bit of that neon fluorescent yellow glow right in the middle there. Then I'm just going to take a tiny bit of our neon red and a tiny bit of the neon orange. So hopefully you can see I'm just picking up a little bit of that. And I'm also going to get some white on my brush at the same time. And again, I'm just tapping, lots of little taps. And as you can see, the reason we're using a mop brush is it gives us that lovely shape that might be plants, it might be trees, it might be ferns in the distance. So I'm just going to keep going with those colours. Things far away from us tend to be paler, so we're just going to be doing lots of random taps until we fill up this space. And then I'm going to come in with a little bit of that permanent rose, and I'm going to pick up a little bit of the fluorescent red again, and I'm still keeping a tiny bit of white. Okay, so I've got the rose and the red and the white. So what we are aiming to do here is we just want to be pale in the middle and then bringing it slightly darker as we get to the edge. Now, the great thing about this technique is you're working nice and lightly. So say you suddenly decided, oh, right, that space in the middle's gotten too small now. We can just go back in with some white and a little bit of our neon yellow, and we can just come back in and build that pale middle section back out again. And we're just going to build up a little bit more. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep smooshing and keep building until we have got pale in the middle, fading out to darker around the edges. Let's speed that up for you guys. So as we build up the darker layers near the edge, then what you want to do is you want to start bringing some of those little taps and dabs over, slightly over your paler area. You'll notice that I'm working mostly with the paint on the top edge of the brush. I kind of push into the paint like that so that I can get the paint on the edge, and then sometimes I even tap it off on the palette just so that I've got this random pattern and shapes made by the brush, and that's going to give me those little prints. I'll do one down here. Look, you can see it's giving me prints that look like foliage and trees and plants. So that's a really simple beginner technique if you want to start bringing some foliage into this. So we've got our really pale center, it's far away, and then we're just bringing in the colors and we're getting closer and closer to us, and nearer the edge, we're getting darker and darker. Now before we go into our very dark edge, what I want to do is I want to bring in some little hints of branches and things like that. So I'm going in with my white. I've got my liner brush, which is a really big long brush, but you guys can just use a standard round brush for this, okay? Obviously the smallest brush you can get, the easier it's going to be to get a nice thin line. But I'm going to roll my brush into the paint, and again you can do that with your round brush as well. I'm going to pick up just a little bit of the orange and a little bit of the red, and I'm hopefully going to get quite a nice, oh yeah, look at that nice peachy sunset color. Now I do want this to be quite pale because it's going to be in the background. So at the very, very basic beginner level, the only thing you need to put in here are some straight lines. You do yourself some lines like this, then you're going to have the hint of faraway trees. I don't even know if you can see that on there. You will see it as I come in with darker colors. If you want though, you can wiggle about and get some little branches. Yeah, that's quite pale. Let's go in with a little bit of a darker color so you guys can see that better. Let's bring in a little bit more of that orange. And remember, when you're painting in trees and branches, they're not symmetrical, they're totally random, they can cross over each other, they can be at slight angles. Literally, you can be as free as you want with this stage. But at the very basic, if you're just starting out and you want this to look like a forest, if you get yourself some little lines like this going in here at different angles and different thicknesses, then that's going to give the impression of some far away. So we're going to work on this little clearing for a little while. I'm going to put a few more in here, and then we're going to move on. We're going to mix up a little bit of a darker color. So we're going to bring some more of that red in. Now, if you are finding you're not getting a really, really clean line and it's getting a bit hairy, kind of dry looking, then I'm dipping my brush only into the water and I'm just loosening that paint with the tiniest bit of water, but I'm not mixing tons of water into my paints. I don't need to do that with acrylics. I'm just loosening the paint with a wet brush as opposed to adding water to the paint. And now we've kind of filled in that furthest away point. So we're coming into this middle area now, and I've got some little branches coming over here. So I think I might have a few tree branches that are going to come sort of slightly sideways. Again, if you don't want to try and paint lots of branches, you can just do another layer of up and down straight line trees. The trees will get darker and they will also get thicker as they get closer to you. So I'm going to continue on doing this. I'm going to add as many as I think looks good. Remember just to keep it really organic. Nature isn't symmetrical. Doesn't matter if you make a mistake, you can always let it dry and paint over it. So I'm going to do more of this layer, and then I'm going to go in with that permanent rose, and I'm going to do some of that, and then we're going to talk about the outside. So just before we go into the outside edge, I'm going to rinse off my brush, but then I am going to squeeze it out in either an old cloth or even some kitchen towel, because we want our brush to be dry, okay? We're always working with a dry brush with acrylics unless I say otherwise. I've decided I want to go in and just add a little bit more of the paler color in that neon yellow. And I should mention at this point, I am using Liquitex paints. I am using a mix of the professional heavy body acrylics as well as some of the Liquitex basics, but I absolutely love Liquitex paints, so highly recommend those. Right, let's go in with a bit of that neon yellow or fluorescent yellow, and I'm just mixing it in with a bit of white. I just want that really, really pale. And you guys might not be able to see this on here, but I'm just putting in a few tiny lines in that paler color that are even far away. I might even try and paint in a little straight up and down one there to hint at a tree. So to get really, really fine lines, you just want to be using light pressure. So I've got lots of paint on my paintbrush. I'm rolling it to get a nice point, and then I'm hardly touching the canvas at all to get that really fine detail. I don't want too many in there, just a few. Felt it was missing a little bit of that brighter color in the middle there. Okay, so let's rinse that off again and give it a dry out. I've also, you might have noticed, added a couple of very prominent trees to the side there. It's just to kind of balance the composition a bit. I did not clean this brush. I've been working quite quickly, so it hasn't dried out too much. If you were going to work slower and have that sitting for ages, then I would give it a rinse out and then just give it a really, really good squeeze to get all of that water out, because you want to be working with a nice fluffy dry brush for this technique. So again, just taking a little bit off the side of my paint, I'm going in with my permanent rose, and I'm going to pick up the tiniest touch of my deep violet this time. And I'm just going to tap those together on the palette. It's always good to smoosh your brush down and get it really spread out and fluffy again as well. So let's go in with some more of that tapping just to bring in, oh, look at that. Such a gorgeous color, isn't it? So I want to just bring in a tiny bit more of that deep violet, and I'm going to tap in. The aim is to fully cover our canvas, but we do also want bits of the other colors showing through. So I'm purposely being quite light in these areas, and I can use, again, smooshing my brush down to get my bristles into the shape I want, and then I can tap on a little pattern there just to get maybe some fern. That kind of looks a bit more like fern. Tapping around the edge. I'm going to go around the whole circle with this, and you can even, you know, brush some paint on now that we're trying to fill in space down here, so there's a base color of that purple. But let's pick up a bit more of the rose and a bit more of the violet, tapping them and working them together on my palette, nice and smushy. And we're going to tap back in here to break that up. Okay, and we want to get darker, so now I'm going in with just the dark deep, I think it's deep violet. Yeah, deep violet, the nice purple. We're just bringing that in on its own to make that really, really dark. Once I've gone around the edges and filled in as much of that as I want and broken it up, then I'm going to go in with the turquoise blue. But I don't want to go in with that yet because I don't want turquoise blue on my brush. And actually, I quite like to work in a way that I don't have to wash my brush out so often. And also, I think, just helps blend the colors in. So again, just using the smooshing technique. Is that a technical term? Maybe, I'm not sure. We're just tapping and dabbing, tapping and dabbing, getting that nice print stamp effect from the brush. Still going in with my two colors a bit, sometimes just the violet and sometimes a mix of the violet and the rose. And I'm just tapping down the way now, using my left hand, which is always tricky for me, just to have some foliage going down there. So once I've got that all filled in, I will be going in with the blue. But right now, let me show you how we can create a bit of depth in that dark area. So I'm going to take a bit of my orange and I'm going to bring it in to that pink and violet mixture. And again, I'm just kind of pushing into the paint and tapping it on my palette till I get it mixed and into a nice color that I want. And what I'm going to do is, now that I've smooshed my brush so that I've got a kind of sharper edge on it, I'm just going to tap on a little bit of that into that violet. Just maybe there's bits of light shining on the tops of those. I'm going to come in and do some more of that later with a clean brush and with the orange and the white. But right now I'm going to add more violet to this picture. And then I'm going to go in with the blue. So I'll be back when the violet's finished. Okay, so I've finished the deep violet now, and I just wiped the excess paint off down the bottom here, although I'm going to go in with some of the blue in that. I am going to really, really thoroughly rinse out this mop brush now, and then I'm going to get an old cloth that I use, but you can use a paper towel. So like I'm really rinsing that out very, very well. I'm squeezing all the water off on the outside of the water jar, and then really, really squeeze all the excess out. And I like to brush it in little circles to get it all dried out and fluffy again. So look at that. We have got a nice clean, but also fluffy and ready to use again mop brush. You can have a couple of mop brushes and you can just swap it out for a new clean fluffy one, but I think this is fine when we're doing this smushy technique, and therefore we're getting that print that we want anyway. So I'm going to go in with a little bit of white and in with the tiniest touch of the violet. Let's see if we can get enough of this mushed up and mixed. Yeah, I know, technical terms, isn't it? And again, tapping on my palette. I've got a little loose bristle there. Tapping on my palette to get the shape that I want. And I'm going to tap in a few little areas of that violet and white mixed together and bring a few down there. Not a lot, I just want to bring in a little bit of a different color there. Okay, and I'm going to go in with, I think I'll need a little bit more fluorescent red. So we're going to take a little bit of that, tapped in with the white. So a little bit of fluorescent red. There was still a bit of the violet on my brush. That's okay because I kind of want it to tone down a little bit. And a little touch of that white. And we're going to just tap in a couple of little lighter areas. So just really lightly, I'm hardly touching the canvas at all. So I'm getting the tiniest bits of paint on here. Just to bring in all these layers that you can add, just make there more depth into the piece. So we've lightened up a couple of those little areas. I'm going to go in with the orange and white mixture as well that I had from earlier, and we're going to highlight the top of those light areas as well. Okay, I'm just gonna scumble some of that off. I don't want to fully clean my brush, but I just want to take that back a little bit. I'm going to go back in with my permanent rose, and I'm just going to get a little bit of that on the very, very edge. Don't know if you guys can see that. And I'm just going to bring in a darker layer slightly further back, just on the edge of those highlighted bits. And then, do you know what? We're going to need a tiny bit more of the permanent rose as well. I like to squeeze paint out as I go. Really don't like to waste paint. Oh, it's a good color. So we're just bringing in a couple of lighter areas. I felt like this was getting all too dark down here. And a little bit up here too. Right now we're gonna go straight back into that deep violet. Again, I haven't cleaned out my brush yet, and I'm just gonna break up the edges with a little bit of that deep violet. Nice. There we go. Okay, that's good. That's brought down a nice lighter area in here, and they've got little bits of that kind of bluey violet in there, which is nice because we're going to go in with some of this. Let's just go straight in now with our turquoise blue. And again, I'm actually going to mix it with a little bit of the deep violet. I might need a bit more deep violet. We're going to see how this looks on the page, and I'm just smooshing on my palette again till my brush is loaded up nicely. And look at that, there is my final layer of foliage, just the tiniest bits coming in at the edges. Doesn't need to be the whole way round. Nature is not symmetrical. And we're going to bring that I think we need a tiny bit more of the violet mixed in with that. I'm going to need some for some trees as well. So let's get that blue, turquoise blue and violet mixed together just by tapping on the palette. I find that's the easiest way to mix things and still keep that nice fluffy shape of our brush. So I might make this corner a bit more blue. Tapping, tapping, tapping. Now I'm going to go in with the straight blue on its own. Again, I'm just going to tap my brush on my palette to spread all my bristles back out again. Go in with a little bit of the straight blue, and I'm just going to add a little bit of that straight blue just along the very edge of where I added the blue. Just always turning my brush as well so that I get a different print from the bristle shapes so that they're not all the same. Tapping in a little bit here and a little bit there. Okay. I'm going to add some more trees coming from this darker layer. So I'm kind of going to go in with the deep violet purple and maybe some of the blue, and we're going to add in a couple of more trees and branches. And then I think we'll maybe add a little bit more highlights to a few areas. We'll see how it's looking. But basically, you know, you can stop at any point. You could stop here. It's kind of got a little love heart shape. Maybe it's because it's coming up to Valentine's Day that I've been thinking about that. But yeah, I'm going to just leave this in my water just now. And I'll clean that one off in a second. But yeah, we're going to go in with some trees, and then I'll carry on for a little bit and I'll come back to you guys. It's just how much you want to add. Remember, as your trees come forward, they're going to get thicker and they're going to get darker. Don't worry if they overlap things that you have already drawn. I'm kind of feeling like a big tree all the way in here, and that dark purple is going to be good. And as I said at the beginning, if you want to keep it really simple and not try and paint trees and just do straight lines, it's still going to give you a similar effect. It doesn't need to be all this fancy branches and whatever else, but just keep working, building up the layers, and you will have a magical fairy forest. Right, I'm going to add some more trees on both sides, and then I'll decide if there's anything else to add and come back to you then. I've cleaned out my brush again and dried it all off, and I'm just going into the white and into that turquoise blue. Again, just tapping on my palette to mix all the colors and keep the brush in the shape that I want. Now I am going to super lightly tap just on the edge of this blue area and try and get it to create little curves where we've got the tops of foliage, some kind of plants or something down here, and the light is just reaching its way through this dense forest, and it's just beginning to catch the light on the tops of some of these. I'm going to tap that away slightly just so it's not so strong down there. And there might be a little bit coming through the very edges, just where that turquoise blue might be tapping, touching the light, just lots of little taps again, just to give us a little bit of a highlight, which means we've got this nice darker area with the deep purple, and then we're just brightening that foreground. So that's just a few extra little tips for you. I'm going to add some more detail to this. I'm going to add my own fairy magic and sparkle to it, and I'll talk through more of that in another video. But I did just want to try and keep this really simple, uber beginner friendly. Okay, so we're starting with our pale colors, and we're just doing lots of tapping and smooshing with that brush, and we're bringing it up to our darker colors at the edge. And as I've said repeatedly now, you can even just do straight lines to indicate your trees, and then draw yourself out a couple of nice big trees at the front. You can have trees coming right into the foreground as well if you want. You can add little details. You could add mushrooms. You could trace out the silhouette of a deer and put a little deer in that. I will show you some examples of those at the end of the video. So keep watching if you want to see some ideas of things that you can add. But for now, I'm just going to enjoy myself making this magic and sparkle and adding a little fairy dust to it. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye for now.